Lord, I pray this morning that we would not just worship you this morning, that we would encounter you, that we would get a glimpse of you in your glory, and that would transform the way we live. And so come and do what you promise, that your word will never return void, but will accomplish what you wish for it to accomplish. And so do that in my heart, do that in our hearts here today. We ask in the mighty and powerful name of Jesus, in whose name we pray. Amen. Well, some of you know when I started my ministry in Houston, Texas, I did a lot of student ministry. And a lot of our people in our student ministry went to high school there. It was Lutheran South Academy. And a lot of those kids didn't want to come to things that were going on in our youth ministry. And that was frustrating to me as the leader of the youth ministry. And so I would go and ask them, hey, why don't you come along? And in one moment of brutal honesty, I think one of them spoke up for the whole group when they said, yeah, it's all right. We get enough of God during the week. And I could feel sort of that righteous indignation filling up in my gut. And what I wanted to say, man, you have no idea what you're talking about. How can you ever get enough of God? That makes zero sense whatsoever. But what I said to them is, tell me, what do you mean by enough God? We had a little bit of a cordial conversation, but I went away from there really thinking and wrestling with myself. I have obviously not done a good enough job of presenting God in a way where they want more. And I hope to right that wrong here this morning. I hope to give you a foretaste of maybe just a little of what God is like, so it whets your appetite to say, wow, I want more of God. That's really what this whole series was about. We started several weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, when Tim started with the basics of the faith. And so he unloaded for us these basics that we really need to understand, and we really need to come back and review often so we don't forget them. And then we talked about there's a kiddie pool that we're in. But then there's nothing wrong with the kiddie pool, but you don't want to stay there, that there's something more for you. And we kept using that theme over and over. And frankly, hopefully you've gotten it now, but if you haven't, I'll just make it as clear as I can. The pool you're standing in right now, hopefully will look like a kiddie pool a year from now. They're like, oh, no, I thought I was in a big pool. No, I really wasn't. I was in a kiddie pool. And a year from now, after that, you'll look back. There always is an opportunity for you to say, wow, there is more for me to discover about who God is. So Lane just read for us a moment ago from the book of Isaiah. That's what I want to unpack for you and go through that verse by verse and hopefully whet your appetite for you to dig into who God is and get to know him just a little bit more. Take a look at verse 21. Do you not know? Have you not heard? Has it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood since the earth was founded? And I remember when I was growing up and going to school, evolution was sort of creeping its way into schools and being talked about. And I remember as a kid sort of wrestling with what I was taught going to church and what I'd read in the Bible and what was taught as science back then. And so as I got a little bit older and you go through the grades a little bit more, and I talked to friends of mine that didn't have a relationship with God, and they'd say things like, well, the earth has always been here all of the time. I'm like, how do you know? Were you there? Like, I have no idea how you know that for certain, that you know the earth has always been here. And he said, well, what if God created it? I'm like, well, really, then what was God doing before time, before the earth was created? Well, God created time. I mean, if God is timeless, if he's eternal, there is no time for God. And so God created, as he created the heavens and the earth, maybe he created time in that moment. And that's when really time began as we understand time. And it's hard for us to get our minds outside of time because this is all we know. We know yesterday and today and tomorrow. That's our concept. And this is all we can think about. It's hard for us to get our minds around timelessness, but this is who God is. And I find it very interesting that now, fast forward a number of years, that even atheist scientists have come to believe that there was a beginning. Some popular ones that you've probably heard of before, Stephen Hawking, Roger Penrose. Almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. And I know some of you are already uncomfortable with Big Bang. That doesn't, frankly, make me uncomfortable a bit, because I know if there was a Big Bang, there's a Big Banger. And I know who the Big Banger is. And this is what we want the world to know, that there is a God. Did you not know? Have you not understood? And even the psalmists begin to understand that. Take a look at Psalm 19. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. That all of creation cries out that God is King of kings and Lord of lords. All of creation declares the glory of God. It's a little hard in our DFW area here to see stars at night. But boy, you go out in West Texas somewhere, or you go out camping somewhere, and you're outside of city lights, and you can just sort of look up at the stars and the heavens. I remember when I was growing up, I worked at Little Caesars, and when I became an assistant manager, part of my responsibility sometimes was closing the store, and I'd get home at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm so hopped up on caffeine, you can't go to sleep right away, and there's nothing on the TV. Some of you are old enough like me to remember the TV when it was beep. There's just a sign on the TV, nothing was playing. And there was no internet back in the day. You're like, how old are you? Like, there was no internet when I was growing up. There's nothing to do. And I remember times sitting on the back porch, looking up at the stars in the sky and just wondering, God, where are you? Who are you? What is all this that's there? How much do I not see and understand and comprehend? I find it amazing that we would much rather look at a little screen in our palm than look up at the majesty, at the skies that proclaim the handiwork of God. Verse 22, he sits enthroned above the circle of the earth. Where's God? This is where he's at. He's sitting enthroned above the circle of the earth, and its people are like grasshoppers. You ever go up in a plane and look down and you see little houses and they look like little matchbox cars and stuff running around? This is God's perspective. This is what he does. He stretches out the heavens like a canopy. He spreads them out like a tent to live in. And boy, I love that analogy. That one sticks with me. It's like God sitting up in heaven. Oh, wait, well, we need some stars and galaxies and things. Here you go. Done. And he just lays them out for us to enjoy. Not hard for God to do that. God speaks, and all those things come into existence. Back in January of 2020, we had one of my friends from my days in Houston, Jeff Williams. He's an astronaut, and he was here. Some of you might have been here for that message. And I wanted him to be there as we had the big rocket ship here. Some of you remember that, and sort of launched that whole series as we're launching a year, not knowing what we're getting into in 2020, but he came and he spoke. And I was fortunate enough to get to know wonderful people, like some of the engineers at NASA and like Jeff and a few other astronauts that I had the privilege of getting to know. And I remember one day I got an email from space from Jeff Williams. I printed it out, not that it tells you it's from space, it tells you it's from Jeff Williams at nasa.gov, but it was really cool to have an email from space. He said, hey, John, I just wanted you to know tomorrow at 03:30 in the morning, I'm gonna be doing a spacewalk. If you wanna look at it on the NASA channel, you could tune in. I'm like, man, I'm getting up for that. I'll set my alarm early. And I got up in the middle of the night and turned on the NASA channel, and I see Jeff in his spacesuit, can't see him, but then I hear his voice communicating back with the shuttle. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that is amazing. And then his commander comes on at some point. He said, hey, Jeff, I know you've got your task to do, but I want you to just pause for a minute and look around. Just marvel at what you see. And so when he came back down to earth, I remember I had a chance to sit down and talk with him, and he was sharing with me some pictures that he had taken, and just what was your experience like being up there in space? Tell me everything to know about it. And he shared with me a picture that a lot of you have seen before. Just the earth, just sort of sitting there. He said, oh man, you don't really know. You've got to combine that with a Bible verse. I'm like, okay, well, what Bible verse? There's a lot of Bible verses. Tell me which. He's like, well, no, it's in Job. I'm like, okay, where in Job? And he said, Job 26. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know that from memory. And so we open up my Bible and we're looking at this picture. He spreads out the northern skies over empty space. He suspends the earth over nothing. Wow. How would have anybody in that day had that perspective? Unless you're the one who created it. They didn't know the earth was round. Certainly didn't know it looks like it's suspended over nothing. And Jeff said, isn't that amazing? This is exactly what God created for us to see and to us to marvel at. Verse 23, he brings princes to naught and reduces the rulers of this world to nothing. No sooner are they planted, no sooner are they sown, no sooner do they take root in the ground than he blows on them and they wither. And like a whirlwind sweeps them away like chaff. Well, that puts our election cycle in perspective, doesn't it? How worried we are about who's going to be the next president. God gives us a little different perspective. Man, as soon as it's in the ground, it's gone. And you're so worried about that. Now, this is don't vote. I think it's our duty to vote. There's a lot of people who died that you and I could have a vote. I think it's really important to do, as followers of Jesus, to vote. What we're not called to do is put our hope in our vote. Doesn't matter who's sitting in the White House. Doesn't matter who is our representative in Congress. Doesn't matter who our representatives here in Texas. It doesn't matter who our mayor is. Because God is sitting on a throne. And he's in control of all things. This gives our perspective on life and who our God is. This is where we put our hope, in a God who breathes. And it's gone. Verse 25. To whom will you compare me? Or who is my equal, says the Holy One. It's a very interesting question. When I thought about that, I think he's alluding to something that I think we all wrestle with. Because I think deep down, we all think that, you know what? I could be God. I was just born a little earlier. I mean, God's just a little older, and he's a little smarter than I am. But I could have, if I were the right circumstances. And we have no idea who God is. And somehow in our little naive mind, we think we can comprehend who God is and understand who he is. Somehow we think that we can choose God, that somehow that's within our power. Can you really choose God? I tell you, everybody's gonna choose God eventually. And when he comes back again in all his glory, and the heavens and the earth are crumbling apart, it says every knee is gonna bow and every tongue is gonna confess that, wow, Jesus is Lord. If God just showed up in that kind of way, nobody has a choice but to choose him. But none of us choose him on our own. It's God who chooses us. And nowhere do I think that's clearer than in Paul's letter to the Ephesians. If you've never read this passage of scripture before or committed it to memory, this is a great one to get to memory. For it is by grace, not my asking, it's by grace that you have been saved through faith. And this is a gift from God, not a payment you made to God. It's a gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. As I've taught that in Bible studies before, I've often asked the question, is there anything you could add to that to make that any clearer? Is there any room for us to take pride in our position? And God couldn't make that any clearer. By grace, you're saved through faith. It's a gift that's been given to you by the Almighty, the Creator of the heavens and the earth. Not by works, so that you can't boast that you're better than anybody else. You didn't choose God. God chose you. So with that perspective, verse 26, lift up your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all of these? He who brings out the starry host one by one and calls forth each of them by name, because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing. You know, one thing I know to be true about you, because it's true about me, is your God is too small. And I don't mean God is too small. Your idea of God is too small. And I know this because there's a man named John, one of the disciples of Jesus, who was exiled on an island of Patmos. And he was taken up into heaven and got to experience the end of the world and how that all unfolds. And he's taken up into heaven and gets to see God in his glory. He records these words in Revelation chapter 1. In his right hand, he held 7 stars. And coming out of his mouth was a sharp double-edged sword. His face was like the sun shining in all of its brilliance. Now, Revelation for a lot of people is a scary, mysterious kind of book, and it is, but it's meant to be an encouraging hope to Christians who are being persecuted, Jesus followers who were just trying to live out their faith, for them to get a perspective of who God is, that he's sitting on the throne, and one day he's gonna come again in all his glory. And so just hold on, because God is coming back. And he takes this picture, if he's got 7 stars, and right after that he says, I fell down when I saw who God was. I fell down like I was dead. And God picks him back up. 7 stars in his hand. We've got a star, might be familiar with it. It's called the sun. We need it. It's pretty big, by the way, if you didn't know. Do you know how many Earths you can fit inside that sun? 1.3 million Earths fit inside that sun, one of our stars. That's not even one of our biggest stars that we are aware of. And I'm sure there's probably bigger ones now, but the biggest one I know about that we've so far discovered is Canis Majoris. You can see the tiny little dot that's the sun, the side of that. You know how many suns fit inside that star? 3 billion. 3 billion suns fit in that star. How big is our God that John describes him? He's holding 7 stars in his hand. Your God is too small. God is almighty and powerful. Verse 27, a natural question to come right after that. Why do you complain, Jacob? Why do you say, Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord? My cause is disregarded by my God. That's a natural question to ask. I think we've all asked that at some point. God, where are you? Are you too busy running the universe? Have you not heard my prayers? Do you not see the situation I'm going through right now? I need you. I can't make it through this. And it feels like my prayers are bouncing off some celestial ceiling. So Isaiah brings us back to the picture of who he is. It's a very natural question. Even the psalmist gave us, I think, a different perspective of the same question. Look at this. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have set in place, oh, what is mankind for that you're mindful of him? Human beings, that you care for them. God, when I look at all that, it's not where are you, God? It's like, why do you even care about me? I'm a grasshopper. I'm not even a grasshopper. I'm a speck of dust in the cosmos that you have created. And yet I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. You knit me together. There's unique DNA in my body that nobody else has. Who are you, God, that you are mindful of me? That is who our God is. Which is why he goes on to say, verse 28, do you not know? Have you not heard? Let's go back to that question. The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. No one. I can't fathom it. You can't. Nobody can fathom it. Nobody's done fathoming God because we're always in the kiddie pool because there's more of God to know. And there's more of him to understand. There's more of him to love. No one can fathom. So if you're struggling today and maybe feeling weak, there's good news for you. Verse 29, he gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. What a great exchange program. Are you feeling weary? Wonderful, I got some strength. You feeling weak? Wonderful, I got some power. Just exchange it. This is what God is doing. And we never see that ever more clearly than we do at the cross. Because of the cross, we get an opportunity to come to the cross and bring our shame. And God gives us forgiveness. We come to the cross with condemnation and a weight on our shoulders. And God gives us mercy. We come to the cross with the weightiness and the sentence of death hanging over us. God says, I give you life. The cross is the great exchange that God made. That you who once were living in darkness now get to experience the light of God. This is what he does. And if you're feeling weak or weary today, know this, that you are connected with the unsurpassable power of God. This is what we are connected with. When we are following Jesus, when his spirit lives in us, we are connected with that power that created the galaxies and the universe. All of that, we're connected to that. So you're feeling weak or weary, don't worry, God is with you. He's got a great exchange program. And then these last two verses of this chapter. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. I love studying words. I do that a lot. I don't bring all of them to you because I think that would be maybe a little boring for at least the majority of you. But every once in a while I find a word that I find very interesting. And the word that's translated here, hope, really is the word for wait. And you see it here. It's kavah in Hebrew. Yet those who wait for the Lord, which is a little different nuance. Those who wait for the Lord will renew their strength. Those who wait. That's where that word hope comes from. I'm waiting. God, I can't do it. I need you. I'm gonna wait. I know who you are. I'm gonna wait. I'm praying. I'm waiting. I'm waiting. And those who hope in the Lord might renew their strength. Maybe if the conditions are right, will renew their strength. Or if you pray hard enough, you'll renew your strength. No, those who wait on the Lord will renew their strength. This is the promise of God. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not grow faint. It is hard to wait. But it's a lot easier to wait when you know who God is. And it's a lot easier to wait when you know what God says about you and who you are in his eyes. Peter reminds us of who we are. I think it's a great way to end our message today. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood. You're a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you have not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. There's always more of God